Follow me on twitch.tv okamiriku for live streams, and the PAX Hunt on both Twitter and Instagram. Let's check out FRACTER. So this game is very unique in the way that they handle the story as well as the graphics and design. So let's start with story. The story doesn't use vocal or dialogue to actually go through the story. It's very based on imagery through the black, white, and grayscale art, as well as the poetry that they give you from beginning to end that explain what's going on. But you can feel so much in this game with just this limited amount of story to it. It's basically mostly played out with a little bit of the poetry, and it just makes it really amazing. And it's really hard to do, but I think they did really great at capturing that style of gameplay where you don't talk to anybody, you don't have to do a whole bunch of dialogues, and then not only that, the gray and white scale is very, very, very hard to make a story from. Not a lot of people can achieve that, and they do very well at this. Now, the story of this actually made me play the game in one sitting. I also played it twice because I didn't 100% it the first time around, and they have different poetry that flows with how you complete the game. You can complete the game without 100%ing it, but it actually changes what they tell you in the poetry. So it does have slightly different outcomes, but it's only based on your percentages. Of course, you want to try to 100% it. Like I said, I played it more than once, and I did play it the first time in one sitting because I wanted to see what happens. So for me, the story gets a 2 out of 2, even though it's missing the usual things people expect for story, like dialogue, as well as vocals and things along those lines. Our next topic for FRACTER is the mechanics/accessibilities. You all know that this plays a great part in my decision making for a game. Now, this game did release on the Switch, and as for Switch mechanics, it works fine. It doesn't have a lot of buttons, and the button combinations are easy to use. And also, taking into consideration color blindness, black, white, and grayscale is actually very colorblind friendly. I've only met one person that had a problem with grayscale, so it's a very low percentage, so I didn't let that impact the score too much. The other thing is that it did come out on the Switch, which means that if you can't play the Switch because of accessibility issues, it does cause that problem, but I'm judging it based on the Switch accessibilities. So I assume that if you have a Switch, you're able to play a Switch. And this gets a 2 out of 2. If they did put the game on other platforms, I think the accessibility would be actually very easy to manipulate between other platforms, seeing how it doesn't require a lot of button combinations to play. Direction. So there was really no way to not go where you needed to go. You could forget different fragments and fractures of the story, but you could still complete the story without 100% finding every nook and cranny. So there wasn't really an easy way to go through it, and it doesn't have that big of an impact. So it gets a 2 out of 2 because there's no way to get lost. Flow, it kind of falls in with our last category because the game flows into one aspect after another together. There's no way to not follow this flow of the game. And I really like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love games where I can go all over the place and go wherever I want. But in some games, having directionality is great. And FRACTER is one of those where the directionality is very important. So it flows very well, and they made it to where direction and flow work hand in hand. So flow also gets a 2 out of 2. Now, where we get a little, it depends on how you yourself view it, but we all know that I have this lovely category called cost per playtime. So what that means is, does the game cost at least $1 per hour or less? Which means that if the game costs $40, it should have at least 40 hours of gameplay. So this particular category, it has this game is worth the cost to me, even though it does come out a little more than $1 per hour. So the game in USD, so United States dollars, is $7. It was $6.99. I round up to the nearest dollar. I finished this game in about 2 hours on my first playthrough, and then my second playthrough was about an hour and a half with 2 hours to go. So basically 4 hours would have been the gameplay. So like each run for me took 2 hours. I understand that for some people it may take a little bit longer or a little bit less time, depending on how quickly you figure out the puzzles in the game. So it falls a tad over $1 per hour, but it's fun, it's driven, and they did such a great work with the grayscale. But since it doesn't reach that, I did give it a 1 out of 2. But don't let that discourage you from getting the game, because like I said, it makes up for that with the story, the grayscale, and all the other aspects of the games make up for that. Just that is the category that I put in there because it's important to me for a game. Some games can elude it, but I always maintain the, it has to be $1 an hour or less to get 2 points. So since it didn't reach that particular, spot, it gets 1 point. So out of it all, its total is 9 out of 10. So it ranks really high in my ranking system, saying how it's a 10 out of 10 scale. So it was 1 point shy of getting a 10 out of 10. That's not bad, and I can't emphasize enough that I recommend picking up this game. The story and how it's presented and the graphics all, drive you forward. The only thing I have to say is that if you are easily spooked, be careful with this game. It's not scary, but there is an aspect that made me jump, which is when you encounter a shadow, so a part of you that's fractured off of yourself, and it's not one that you actually bring back into yourself, it's a shadow. A creepy music starts and they charge you, so it jump scared me. So if you have a problem with jump scares or things along those lines, just take that into consideration. I know a few people who don't like spooky things. This game isn't really spooky, it just has that one jump scare, and once you get used to it, it's not so bad. I ran into a lot of them at first, so there is that. I just wanted to put that out there for anybody who may have those problems. Seeing how my doctors label it as I am a high-strung person, which means that I'm easily, scared or jump scared or, stressed and stuff. So I just wanted to put that in there in case there's anybody else who has issues with that. But aside from that, I recommend picking up the game for anybody and everybody because It's easy to play, it's got a great story, and it's not really a scary game. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I will address them as I see them. Until next time, guys, stay happy, healthy, and as always, wholesome, my lovely pups.